For Global Book Network, I'm Zach Feldman. Thanks so much for tuning in here on globalbooknetwork.tv and on Global Book Network's YouTube channel. Joining us over the phone right now, he's a brand new author, and he has a new book out called The Kettle Pours a Universe. It is Johnny Scifo. Johnny, thanks so much for joining me here on Global Book Network. How's everything going?
Doing well, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Tell me all about The Kettle Pours a Universe. It's an incredible novel, and I'm excited for people to check it out.
Yeah, so I started writing this book after my second book, Brain Flowers, 10 Keys to Awakening in the Real World. And my editor was teasing me the whole time saying, there's a mystical voice that kind of keeps showing up in here that is not really your teacher voice. So all those notes got saved because there were many lessons that I still wanted to teach and to share, especially with a Western audience that may not be familiar with a lot of these traditional stories from Asia. And I put it together, and it first was supposed to be just like a little pocketbook. I was going to do like a short story to go with a tin of tea. And again, my editors were like, nope, make it a real story. So I fleshed it out and I fleshed it out and I fleshed it out, and it came really naturally. I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited to share it. A lot of the stories that I encounter, especially in the publishing world, because I did start my own publishing company in order to release some of these books and novels that I've been working on, that they have very like linear story arcs. It starts here and it ends here. So one of the things that I love about these different kinds of stories is they're more like short stories all woven together, and then there's a grand theme that pulls it all. And so the Kettle Pours Universe is really about interconnectedness, but there's a lot of individual stories throughout the main novel that give us a bird's eye view into some of these lessons that in a more Western context, we'll say.
That's incredible. It's interesting too. You kind of go into that Western universe because obviously you're an East Coast guy,
Yeah.
as well as I am. I mean, was that difficult to kind of get that studying or like just kind of get that feel of that side?
Well, I studied yoga for many years. I'm a master yoga teacher. I have an ERYT 500, which is the highest level distinction that you can have.
That's
So
incredible.
I wasn't new to a lot of these stories. Through yoga, I bounced around. I'm actually an initiated gatekeeper. It's basically like a low-level shaman in the Kero shamans.
Hmm.
And I also have been studying Buddhism and Zen for a long time. So
Wow,
this book is a combination of a lot of those teachings and put into a fictional context so that there's really no religious specifically kind of feel to it. I really like that if you study all these religions long enough, there's a lot of commonality, much more so than the diversity that we seem to emphasize most of the time. And just bringing it back to like a feel-good story, to real world events, and something that people can finish and feel like, wow, like this just made me happy. Because there's so many books today and there's so many TV shows that are so stimulating, and we're putting so much focus on things that for me are kind of like negative themes that, like there are things on Netflix, not to go after Netflix, but like how many documentaries are there about serial killers?
oh my gosh,
Like
too many.
we just need more positive energy and more positive storylines, and like what happened to Fables. So I
Yeah.
tried to write something that was a group of small stories with a lot of lessons that hopefully somebody can read and turn back to and say, hey, I remember this from the Kettle Pours Universe.
That's incredible. Something about you do digital meditation sessions too. Tell me about that little side job you're doing as well.
So, like I said, I had gotten into yoga, and one of the things that you have to do when you become an advanced teacher is you basically have to do the equivalent of a thesis.
Hmm.
So, my thesis, I've been a lifelong musician. I've been playing the drums since age 10. And I went from drumming in bands to having a band in college. Then I was a DJ for a while. And it was kind of like that
You've like
hedonistic.
done it all then, basically.
I mean, I've definitely bounced around. My wife teases me that I'm a cat because of my personality, but also because I've had 9 lives. And honestly, it was taking all the things that I learned from the rave, the stuff of like, how do you just like lock people in for an hour, the synchronicity and the repetition of the music, And then I just tried to turn it on its head and say, can we spin this positive? I had a lot of forays into hedonism, I will say. I've had my share of rough experiences. I go into some of them in my first book just to kind of show like that I'm not preaching from on high. I've done the
Hmm.
work, and that's how I can say for sure that it works. And the journey has basically led me to a place. I know how I could make you crazy. Now let me do it in reverse so I know how to make you relax. And I didn't really hear any of the music that I was thinking about. I started reading a lot of neuroscience. I had learned a lot about music from shamanism and like the traditional drumming and stuff, that there are really basic
Yeah.
rules to help people drop into these lower levels of consciousness. The brainwave states, we're usually in this high active beta state. And then meditation practice is supposed to drop you into alpha, and if you're lucky, even theta wave, which is more
That's
relaxed. And one of the interesting points is that it makes you lose your sense of personal self. The mechanism in the brain that makes you feel that you are separate actually shuts down when you go into these lower brainwave states.
wow.
So
That's incredible.
the
I mean,
music that I wrote was is basically
yeah.
trying to facilitate that.
That's insane, and obviously, as a former DJ myself too. I mean, I never thought of it that way, which is insane. I mean, literally, like you DJ, you went to DJ clubs and you do all these nighttime stuff like that. It's definitely draws a lot out of you, but trying to I guess bring that back into how can you then take that and help somebody is so I never really thought of it like that. Obviously, I used to be a DJ too, and I never thought of like the fact that um it was so like there was a correlation between DJing and trying to be able to help others, and I thought that was really cool that you kind of discovered that. I want to ask you too about this book specifically. When someone picks it up, what's the one thing you want them to get out of it? What's like the biggest thing that that you want them to take away from it?
So admittedly, the first thing I want them to do is I just want them to enjoy it. I want them to be able to sit down and read something that is just not super stimulating, that just makes you relax and sink into a world that is just a little bit of an escape from some of the chaos that we're living through. And the main theme of the book that I'd like to share is really interconnectedness. If you follow it all the way through, all the stories are intertwined. And that is really a significant part of everybody's life that I feel like we are forgetting about the wisdom of our elders. We're forgetting about the importance of community. We're spending too much time indoors. And those who emphasize these things and make them a priority in general seem to be happier. So I tried to
Yeah.
illustrate that in my own way.
And it definitely comes off too. The writing is incredible. It's a lot of fun to read. About you though, because you've done literally so much in your career, and so many different things in your career, from music to doing textiles too. I've heard. What motivates you? What's like your biggest motivation, and what is something that just drives you? I guess.
I think the world is still amazing. I think it's still beautiful. I think that we are just kind of like in a pocket that, technology has taken the wheel. And so people are really curious what happens next. But I love to fish. I love to hike. I love being outdoors. And that kind of connection, I think, is really grounding. I think when we go outside and we kind of recognize how both beautiful and harsh life is in a wilderness setting, it puts a lot of things in perspective. And a lot of the things that get us worked up, that make us feel anxious and crazy and depressed, and all these words that we have for these feelings, really just come from disconnection. So, my main purpose, I think, is just to help people reconnect. And I put a lot of energy into that.
Yeah, you do, and it shows because it's really cool. What you've done with this book, and also with your meditation stuff. I mean, it's just been incredible to see. What you've done for not only people but also for your career too. You're an award-winning author now. Which is amazing. I mean, did you ever think that that was going to happen?
I mean, no, honestly, it took me almost 10 years to write my first book because it was mostly journal entries, and then it just kept getting distilled into something that was more useful. And I really started writing seriously when COVID hit. I was a festival teacher. I was used to traveling around and being on stage and playing music. And when everything shut down, I did not transfer to the online world very well. I'm used to the energy of a room and I love the interpersonal connection. My favorite part of a class is the last 10 minutes after it's over and people come up to me to share their experience and I can try to push them in a direction with their practice. That's something that like really pumps me up. Um, I've had a lot of interesting experiences because I have gone to all these different places with not only my teaching, but also the traditions that I've followed.
And done all these different avenues and different career paths and everything
Yeah,
possible in the
I
world.
I let spirit guide me, like
Yeah.
I don't think the thing I've actually like the thing I'm really meant to do, I don't even think it's manifested yet. I feel like I'm still collecting all the skills necessary to do the real thing.
Wow. And and why not? Because I mean, you have such a great career that has transpired to now this. Obviously the kettle pours a universe, and people are eating it up like crazy. What is next for you, Johnny? Like, are you still going to continue this writing journey, or is there something else you want to explore?
I'm definitely going to continue the writing journey. Writing, by far, of all the things that I've done, I feel like writing is the space where I can express myself the best, where what I'm trying to say is hitting the way I want. As a DJ, I always felt like I was playing music in the wrong location, that I was always like a step out of sync with what people really wanted to hear. And I had to admit that a lot of my desires and a lot of my personal taste is kind of niche. So writing allows me to speak to a broad audience, and so I think I'm going to stick with it. It comes very naturally.
Yeah, it does, and it shows because it's they're successful books, and this one too, I can totally see being just as successful as everything else you've done too. Would you have a DJ name, like a fun DJ name when you were DJing?
My DJ name was Johnny Beats. There's
Oh hell
probably
yeah,
nothing left on the internet to to see me, but I could shoot you some stuff.
hell yeah,
I
would love to
actually
see it.
wrote an album of house music last year, and I decided not to release it because I
Why
felt
not?
well.
Come on.
I'm not a big fan of the sentiment that like as an artist you put it out there and whatever happens happens. I feel like as an artist you have a responsibility for what you create. And there are a lot of people who are willing to create controversy, who are
Yeah,
willing to just feed into negative situations literally for clicks and likes. And I wrote that album basically as a therapy to my own anxiety about things going on in my life. My wife had two really tough pregnancies. And I basically wrote it in her second pregnancy while she was on bed rest. And I just late at night put the headphones on and let it out. But
yeah,
it's music that when I listen to it now, as I've been able to take a step back from it, I almost like hear my own insanity.
yeah. It's
And
hard.
that's
It's
not what
hard.
I want to put out. I want to put out stuff like The Kettle and things that help people come
Yeah,
into themselves and explore the invisible world, things that are important. There's a lot of entertainment that's fun, but isn't important. I hope
yeah.
that my work continues to feel important.
100%. And you just wise words from you, honestly. And it makes sense completely. But hopefully one day we'll see, a slither of something from that album, because I mean, it's your art, and it definitely should be seen by the masses. Um it's got
And honestly,
it's
as a DJ and a wild boy, I have two of my own boys now, and I just don't want to put anything on the internet that might embarrass them someday.
oh, come on. Is it that embarrassing?
I'll,
I
I'll
don't know.
send it
I
to
don't
you.
know.
We
I
can we
haven't
could
seen
talk
it.
about
I don't know.
it.
One day, it's fine. What is next for you, Johnny? I mean, obviously, we talked a little about what's next for you, but what are you working on now in the back burner?
So I have multiple manuscripts that I'm working on. I'm working on a nonfiction book that is basically similar to the 10 Keys, but it's hopefully going to connect people with being outside and just reconnecting to nature at large. I have a couple fictional stories that I'm working on. The next book out, I'm trying to do one book a year, and I have a Substack going
That's
right now.
difficult. That's really difficult.
It is, but I have to admit too that the stereotype of like you're just the writer, and Stephen King goes into this in his book on writing about how his muse is this curmudgeon in the basement, and like every day he's got to basically like knock at it and like work on it. And I joke that my muse is more like a girl in her early 20s. She comes in for a little while, hangs out, we have a wild time, and then she just disappears. So I wrote the Kettle Pours a Universe in about 3 months. It just
Wow,
exploded out of me.
that's
Um,
incredible.
and the first book took 10 years. So
Wow.
I think a lot of it is that once you do it once and you go through the whole process, you figure out a lot of stuff. And um, I do also believe that imposter syndrome is something that you ultimately overcome. It's a personal journey, and there's no specific marker that makes you say, "Hey, I'm here now." But when I held the book in my hands for the first time, it was like, I'm really an author, no matter how many copies it sells. It's here in my hands, and that just broke me free, and I've been
And,
running with it
and
since.
it's got to be such a great feeling too, to know that you have a physical copy of something you've created, right in your palm
Absolutely,
of your hands.
yeah. Because I mean, I'm 38. I'm from the day of 8-track recorders and CDs and like physical media still.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good feeling when you can finally say, listen, this is my creation. But I mean, the fact that what is the motivation to like how for those who are like, I guess, struggling to write their own book, or just struggling to write in general, like how do you stay motivated to write? I mean, the fact that you wrote this in 3 months is insane. But also it's like I think of it as like I'm like that's incredible. That's literally incredible.
Thank you.
What do you do?
So I write every day. That's the first thing. I do believe that creativity is kind of like a muscular set that you have to literally work out your body to stay in good shape, and you have to work your creative skill set all the time. Um, I have a mentor, his name's Brian, and when we talk, one of the things that we often talk about is not the product itself, but all those things that happen in the background, the time that you take to reset your studio or your writing space, and the down days where you're just cleaning up your life and cleaning out the closet, because all those things go into your mental health, and all of those things attribute to stress in a negative way if they get too cumbersome. So for anybody who's like looking for advice about being creative, the first thing is I think that anybody can be creative. I don't think creativity is limited exclusively to art. I think we put a lot of emphasis there, but I think there are opportunities every day to be creative. Be creative about the way you set up your room. Be creative about what you make for dinner. Like there's so many opportunities for you to express yourself in a joyous way that doesn't have to be saved on a hard drive forever. And living in that mind frame, that in the mindfulness way, right, one step at a time, and every step leading to something. So for me, a lot of those some things are just creative pleasure. So
Wow. And that's such great advice. And I hope people really take that to the heart, because I mean that's just it's true. When you're creating art, I mean you really got to stick to it, and you got to be, your best self too, and put what you want to put out there. Which is like honestly the best advice possible.
I did an interview. I used to work for New York Yoga Magazine when it was a publication, and I interviewed MC Yogi when his book Spiritual Graffiti came out, and he wrote his book in 6 months. And I remember at
Wow.
the time, because I was still deep into my first book journey. I'm like, 6 months, like how do you do that? And he said you could do it. You just have to put your mind to it. But he said it like so bluntly that it was like you're just not trying hard enough. And
Mm,
that shook me, and that was one of the things that ultimately was like, I can do this. I
that's
am
awesome.
just being afraid.
Well, the Kettle Pours Universe, it's out now. You can get it on booklife.com. But for those who want to follow you, Johnny, where can they go?
So I have a website, johnnyscifo.com. I'm not huge into social media, but I do have a very active Substack that I display essays and poems and like all different kinds of my writing every week on Friday.
Oh, that's incredible. We'll definitely check that out too. JohnnyScifo.com. Johnny Scifo, thank you so much for joining me here on Globe Book Network. And seriously, best luck with the book. Again, it's called The Kettle Pours Universe. You can get it on booklife.com and everywhere else books are sold too. Johnny Scifo, thanks again for joining me here.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Check out more interviews here on globalbooknetwork.tv. Just join us here on YouTube and on globalbooknetwork.tv. Check out all the different latest stuff. That's it for me. I'm Zach Feldman. Thanks so much for joining us here for another interview on Globe Book Network.